Brandon, we really appreciate you doing this, man.
Yeah.
It means a lot that you would be the first, the inaugural guest.
Leadoff hitter, you did.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've gotten used to being the leadoff
And
hitter now. So.
I got to be honest with you. We were originally, when we thought about doing this podcast, just going to have it be a classic audio podcast.
Yeah.
But when people heard that you were the first one, they got really upset that they wouldn't be able to then see your smile.
Yeah.
So we
well, now we got it. Now we're able to see me smile. I appreciate that.
In all seriousness, though, that has become such a thing with you and Gary Cohen deeming you the happiest player in baseball.
Yeah.
Where does that temperament come from? Have you always been like that? Have you always had this sort of temperament?
I've always enjoyed life in general, and always been easy to make laugh, and people always make fun of my laugh, and it's something that I've never held back on. When someone it's first of all, it's easy, and then when somebody really makes me laugh, I really get into it, and people find it funny when I laugh because it is kind of like a hyena cackling. So, it's one of those things where I think even more so now, my faith and my family have given me kind of this perspective of every day, that I'm really, really blessed to be in the position that I'm in. I'm a Major League Baseball player, playing for the New York Mets. I never would have dreamed that I would have been in New York, growing up in Wyoming. Something to be able to go from 500,000 people in the whole state to, when I went to Brooklyn, there was 5 million just in Brooklyn.
A little different.
Yeah,
a little
it was
different.
Totally different. And so I try and keep that perspective of every day that I'm really blessed to be here. That I'm having so much fun, just living out my dream. How many people really dream about something since they were 3-4 years old, and then get to live it out? I'm really, really fortunate in that aspect, and it's a perspective of just trying to realize that just putting on that jersey and going and spending time with people, automatically, like when I was a kid, I used to think like, oh, those guys are like superheroes, like they must have all these amazing, things about them. And it really, I'm a normal guy. I try and work hard at my job, and I'm fortunate to play a game as my job. But when you put that jersey on and you go spend that time with kids or fans, parents, it really means a lot to them. And in that aspect, it, is also fulfilling to me, because I can have that kind of impact just by spending 5 minutes with a kid, by going, when I'm on the field, just going and signing a few things for the fans, for the kids there, and really ignite that love for baseball that I got when I went to Coors when I was young, and bullpen catcher tossed up that ball to me, and I kept it for the rest of my life. It ignited that love for baseball, and even more so. So for me to be able to have that impact on kids, to be able to play this game as my job, I'm really, really blessed, and I think that kind of overflows, and also that perspective of from the faith standpoint of trying to enjoy every day rather than just get through it. I think I found in the past, I found that sometimes I would just try to get to the end of days rather than enjoy them and try and enjoy the little things. And so I think that change of perspective has started to, see, now it's what people see, the smile coming out. When I get a base hit, when I get on, when I get a walk, when I get hit, anytime I get on base, hit a home run, whatever it may be, help out the team. There's satisfaction in doing your job well. And then secondly, just to be able to do my job well and have it be baseball, which there's a lot of hard work that goes on beforehand to get to those spots that most people don't see. Mm-hmm. And kind of that hard work, it paid off for that hit, or for that walk, whatever it may be. And that satisfaction of putting in hard work and seeing fruits come of it, fruits come of the labor. It's satisfying, and it brings a smile to your face. So I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it's one, just the joy that comes out from helping the team, from trying to do my job well, and then two, the perspective of being so blessed to be in this position, and to make such an impact with such little time.
I think that's all the time we have.
I was going to say, no, that was I don't think we even need anything else. That was a perfect answer right there. We can release that as its own separate podcast.
Yeah, I'm just really, really blessed to be here. I mean, I get to just tell my story, and it's fun.
And that's, I mean, part of the reason we wanted you to really kick off this podcast is because your story is such a good one, and this is genuine. I mean, people, sometimes I think people don't know if it's an actor or not, and this is as genuine as it gets.
But on top of that, you've had success this year. This has been a very good season for you. So it's allowed you to become this fan favorite. It's allowed you to, when you do walk into a room and there's a bunch of kids hoping to meet you, they're really excited to meet one of the best players on the team.
That's a cool feeling.
Do you feel like this season has really established you as a major league player?
I think it's definitely helped. Obviously, I can't make those decisions, and that's another thing I try and remind myself of, is to control what I can control. That's the effort I go and put out every day, and the work I go put in. But it's definitely shown to me, at least, that sometimes when you're coming off the bench, you're like, I'd like to see what I could do if I played every day, and we got to see a little glimpse of that last year, August, September. And then you come into this season and it's like, okay, defined role, but then it totally flipped, and Cespedes got hurt, Lagares got hurt, and now I go in there playing every day, and have had success with that, and over an extended period of time. It wasn't just a week or two, a couple months there, and it's been, and to be able to have that, it's made me feel like I belong, and so for me personally, I think it's shown that yes, I am a Major League Baseball player, and I can play on an everyday basis and contribute on an everyday basis. But again, I don't make those decisions, and so I will continue to try. There's definitely things that I can still work on, and I will continue to work on things until they tell me I can't anymore. But it's one of those things where this season definitely has had an impact on me and my outlook on even myself, because you put a lot of hard work in during the off season, and you work on things, but until you get into game situations, you never know if it'll quite translate, or what might come of it. So it's definitely opened up my eyes, even to being able to. I think one thing I've really seen this year is being able to drive the ball better. And that was one thing that they told me this offseason, was they said, hey, you hit the ball hard enough, consistently enough, that if you just elevated it a little bit, you could be this kind of guy. You could hit maybe 20 or whatever. And I was like, okay, that sounds nice. and I appreciate the information. I'll do the best I can with that information and try and adjust. But then I get into the season, and in a couple months have driven the ball well.
How do you make that adjustment? I mean, when you talk about working on it,
there's been a couple things. It's been with my legs. Prior, I didn't use my legs as much in the swing. I was pretty talented with just hand-eye coordination and used that a lot. And when K-Long came in 6, they noticed that there was some untapped potential there, and so most people might think that you elevate with your angle, because people talk about launch angle, right? So they might think that you elevate with your body angle, but you don't. You actually elevate the ball with your legs, and so that's where people can go wrong, actually. And I did for probably a year of trying to elevate that ball with my body angle rather than with my legs. And then also to realize, there's been a few wise people that have told me that home runs are not hit, they are thrown. And so it's one of those things that you have to hone in on the right pitches. And that was one thing that I've been doing well consistently throughout my career. And so for me, it was just trying to take that same approach into a little bit different swing, as in using my legs just a little bit more. And that takes some time with kind of getting to the point where you don't think about it anymore. When you just do it, because when we get up to the plate, it's just reactions at that point, really. You go in with a plan, but just reactions. And so for your body to just go into that muscle memory mode of using your legs and driving that ball, and then, just relying on my strike zone to try and pick out the best pitches to drive. But yeah, that's really the biggest thing, and it is different for everybody. That's the other thing. Swings are not, they're not. There's certain things that everybody does well, but there's certain things that other people can get away with that these people can't, and vice versa. So, you have to kind of find what works for you as well.
It's interesting that you say, though, that phrase, home runs aren't hit, they're thrown, because it makes a lot of sense. And for you, it probably was, I don't want to say an easy adjustment, but easier than most because of your strike zone discipline. Right. And it's something that, it was such a key as to why the Mets loved you and drafted you in 2011 in the first round. But it's always been fascinating to me to learn about how you went about honing that strike zone and learning that strike zone. And I know for you, a lot of it dates all the way back to just working with your dad playing catch in Wyoming. Yeah. What types of things did you guys do and did he do, even at an early age with you, to hone that pitch recognition and that strike zone?
When I was really young, pitch recognition was big, so we would throw, because when you grow up, you're a pitcher and a position player, so we would work on throwing different pitches, and then my dad would throw those pitches, all these different pitches back to me, and he would make me, when we were playing catch, he would throw these different pitches, and he would say, all right, what was that? What was this? And so we would work on pitch recognition even just while playing catch, not even just hitting. And then after that, when we would go work on, toss, or he would go throw to me, we would work on staying over the plate. And that was just something that, I didn't know, I guess, innately, but, Dad worked on that with me, and so I just thought that's the way it was. This is just what you do. You swing at balls over the plate, right? That's the basis of it, of baseball. Swinging balls over the plate, leave everything else. And so we would work on that, and if I swing at a ball, he would tell me, and then I would try and throw that into the memory banks, and it was just repetition. And once we got the barn in the backyard, then I was able to just work on that, and I would go work on the tee, and then it gets to the point where almost you start swinging, and if you feel your body getting out of position, it's going to be a ball.
Interesting.
And so it's one of those things where it starts to become like, all right, I'm swinging at everything. Oh, I feel getting out, so I'm not going to swing at that. So it's again a double-edged sword. It's that pitch recognition, being able to go up there and have a plan and go after what you're trying to hit. But then secondly, to listen to your body, and when it feels like I'm getting out of position, that's probably a ball. To listen to that reaction. So that all comes to the finished product of trying to have a good strike zone, and you use it all together, and just a reaction at the plate. But we've worked on that since I was really young, and then when I got into the Mets program is when it really got honed in, because my first instructs I showed up, that's what they preached, was have a plan, and then when you go up there, you're looking for one zone. This is how you're gonna approach it. Maybe even take half the plate, And these were all things they were like, just experiment with this. Go up there and only swing at pitches on the outside part of the plate. Go up there and only swing at pitches on the inside part of it. Go up there and only swing at a curveball. Go up there and only swing at a fastball. Whatever it may be. And I didn't realize it at that point because I wanted to try and put good numbers out there to try and show. Whatever that I belonged or, whatever it may be. But at that point, I wish somebody would have told me, And they did, but I wish I would have listened. Just throw it out the window and the results, and just go work on the process. Just literally go try these things out and see what works for you best. And it did work out, but to the point of where when we got to instructs, they told us, all right, fine, you're still worrying about the results. You're just going to take until 2 strikes. And that way you're going to see a ton of pitches, and you're gonna understand that strike zone better.
It'll force you.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So when I got in there, and I'm not gonna lie, I was not a fan of it when I got there, but I'm very thankful for it now. It taught me even more so at that speed of the game how to control the strike zone, what really were strikes, how you could sometimes lay off pitches and recognize pitches after seeing them, once or twice and not swinging at them. But it was really beneficial for me because the Mets just bought into that approach that my dad had for me since growing up.
But you weren't in the instructional league by yourself. I mean,
No.
there was a whole slew of people that were getting this same message.
Right.
Why did it take with you as much as it did, and how much did your failures in the minor leagues kind of shape the major league player you've become?
So I think it took with me a little bit more because of my past with my dad, that it was kind of what we were going after, was to swing at strikes, and for me, balls, I guess based on balls, walking was never a bad thing, and for some people, I remember some guys would get like upset when they would walk because they were like, they didn't throw me anything, and I'm like, that's good because you're on base. So I looked at it with at a different perspective. So I think that's why it took with me, is because that meant a successful at bat to me, whether you get on base by a base hit or if you walk. And then secondly, the failures in the minor leagues have definitely shaped me as a Major League Baseball player. I would not be nearly able to handle the failures here, because that's one of the things is they would tell us all the time that some people that get to the big leagues and never fail, they get there and you're inevitably going to fail at the big leagues at some point, and they wouldn't know quite how to deal with it. Well, luckily I failed quite a few times in the minor leagues, so I had things that I could go back to. I have notes on hitting all the way back to probably 2013, maybe even 2012, 2011. That's when I kind of started doing that.
You would take
notes on my phone. There's hitting notes, and there's notepads. I used to in 2013. I was so desperate that I was literally coming back after every at bat. I would write down the pitch and where they threw it, and I have that back at home, and I logged probably half the season. Wow. Of every at bat, where they threw it, what pitch, to try and figure out how they were pitching me, why I was getting out so much. Like, was it a strike, that I swung at, or was it a ball? Was I chasing? Those kind of things. And so I tried out a lot of different things, but I have notes going all the way back on the failures and how I got out of this one, how I got out of this one, and then eventually you just kind of see that most of the time it's you kind of getting outside of your zone. It's you possibly swinging at borderline pitches, possibly just being pitched well for a little stretch where you face some good pitchers, but a lot of the times we compound that by thinking that it's something that we're doing, which, don't get me wrong, there are some little mechanical things that go on that you have to take care of throughout the game. But again, going back to that, homers are thrown, they're not hit. If you're not getting the pitches, then you're not going to get the hits either. And so we compound that by trying to change these things, and then you end up having a longer slump than you might have before. So it's one of those things where I definitely am thankful for the failures now. They were not easy to go through. They're still not easy to go through, but they definitely help on these bigger stage now. If you had to go through these failures on this stage now for the first time, it would be a much different feeling and experience than before.
And I would imagine that going through those failures, pardon me, but going through them just as any normal player is tough.
Yeah.
But going through them when you're a first-round pick
yeah.
has to be a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talk all the time about your positive outlook, but just how tough was it going through the minor leagues, not always having success,
Yeah.
having that first-round tag on you,
Yeah.
and also knowing about the guy that was drafted immediately
Yeah.
behind you in Jose Fernandez,
Yeah.
and the fact, I mean, watching, I think it was 153 players from that draft
Yeah.
made their major league debut before you did.
Yeah.
How tough was all of that?
So, you know, it was really tough. I remember in Brooklyn in 2012, I was hitting like 160 for the first month, and I was just getting worn out by the fans, and you know, they were just, you know, just cursing at me and saying, you know, why did we draft you? Why did we give you so much money? And I was thinking, yeah, I don't know, you know, like, you know, at that point you're like, yeah, I don't know either, because I'm just, you know, I'm not very good right now. That's the thing is, you know, the fans are telling you, but you already know, when you're not doing well, and so it was really tough to go through, because not only was it just slumping, but like you said, you had that target on your back too, because you had that first round status over your head, which there's great things that come with that. I don't know what position I would be in. I don't know if I'd be here if I was, you know, a 35th, 40th round pick, you know, in there, because I was given a lot of opportunities, and I needed them. Mm-hmm. I needed to play a lot of games. I needed to face a lot of pitchers and have a lot of at-bats, because I had a lot of things to hone in. But, you know, as we can say from this point now, it was worth it. You know, they definitely saw something in there, and it was worth it. But at that point, you're like, man, I don't know either, because I'm supposed to step in here. I'm a first rounder. I'm supposed to step in here and have success right away. And that was my perspective, is that, you know, they kind of, you know, there was a scout that came in, laid it out, and said, you're going to be here for half a year, you're going to be here for half a year, you're going to be here for half a year, you're going to be here for half a year, then you're in the big leagues, right? And so it was like
easy.
It was like, yeah, you're gonna be 2 years and you're in the big leagues, you know, 20 years old, and that is not how it worked out for me at all. And you know, to have that kind of plan laid out, and it was like, I'm way behind that. You know, it made it really tough. But my family was my biggest supporters through that, biggest cheerleaders. My faith helped immensely with that. I would not be in this position without it. But it was very tough, having that first round title above your head. But again,
and was Fernandez being drafted immediately behind you an added layer? Like, is that something that you really thought about a lot when you would see that level of success right away?
I think what I thought about Fernandez is, if people could have predicted that, he would have gone number 1 overall. That's kind of what I thought, because, you know, I knew that I should be doing better, mm-hmm. but I also knew that he was doing abnormally well. Like, he was amazing, mm-hmm. You know, right from the start. And I faced him right at the beginning, and it was different, you know. Yeah. And so for me, him being drafted right after me, yeah, it came with a stigma that, you know, could have gone with him. But when people would ask me that, I'd say, well, there's 12 other teams that would have drafted him number 1 overall. Like, if they would have known number 1, this kid, this is what he's going to do, he would have gone first, because he's going to get there quick, and he's going to be successful, right? But that's the part about the draft, is you're only given so much information, and you make the best decisions with what you have. And so I wasn't too concerned with Fernandez, but, you know, as the years went on, I mean, I knew that draft class was strong, and you just see guys that you were drafted with, just one right after the other, just making their, you know, debut, and you're like, and you're still in high A or double, you know, whatever. That is another place that I really had to learn how to focus on what I could control and try and not look around too much, because we're all built differently, we're all given different talents, and we all, you know, find those talents at different times. that was one thing that I had to really, understand and really become okay with was, I'm just going to put my head down. I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm going to control what I can control. I'm going to put the effort out there. And if I don't make it, it's not going to be because I didn't work hard enough. It's not because I didn't put the preparation in. It's because I didn't make the sacrifices. And so that was the biggest thing for me, is I was going to try and take care of all my P's and Q's and then let the rest take care of itself. But it was something that had to be learned. It wasn't an innate, thought of mine.
So was there a time where you thought to yourself, this might not work, I might not make it to the major leagues?
Yeah.
What was the hardest moment or the toughest thing that you can look back on and say, this almost got me out?
I think the one that I look at the most is, like, when you bring that, the first thing that comes up to mind was pretty much like the first time it happened was Brooklyn. Again, like I said, I was, for the first month, hitting like 160. And it was later that month. It was in like middle to end of July. I think I have it written down somewhere, because it was that big of an impact on me. I was hitting like under 200, and I was pretty much thinking, okay, this might not work out. Like they must have missed on me, because what I'm doing just isn't working, and I'm trying to put in the hard work and everything. And I remember I had just, this was a big moment in my life for faith as well, because I had kind of said, okay, God, if you're not going to get this done for me, I was looking at it from a very selfish standpoint. If you're not going to get this done for me, I'll get it done myself. And I just kind of like thrown God to the side, and I had just was so focused on me and myself. And I remember getting to a breaking point where I was just broken. I was on my knees. I tried to work as hard as I could. The lifestyle was getting to me. I hadn't seen family. It was just all, I had just gotten to a breaking point. I was struggling everywhere I went. People were, questioning, what the heck did people see in you? And I was in Mahoney Valley, and I called my parents and just, kind of broke down to them and just said, like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm a failure, these kind of things. And they lifted me up, and they pointed me back to my faith, back to God, and they said, you need to really have some alone time. You need to come back and come to God. And I did. I remember that night I prayed a long prayer, and at the end, it basically, it was just me talking and just pouring out my feelings. And at the end, it was basically, God, I know you've got my life in your hands, and I know I've been absent for a little bit, but I'm coming back, and I just want to say, if you want me to make it, then I'm going to make it. And if you don't, then I'm not, and that's going to be okay, and I'm going to go do, and I'm going to go help somewhere else. There's going to be purpose to my life still. And I remember the next day, I was a triple shy of the cycle, and it was almost like this huge weight had just been lifted off me, and I just, not to say that not to like go out there and say like, hey, if you're in a rough place in your life, and you just break down and come to God and say, this prayer that all your troubles are going to go away. That's not it at all. But a lot of times I've felt like God spoke to me through baseball. And he does. He uses things that are very dear to us to speak to us, because that gets our attention the best. And I just remember that moment. It was such an impact in my life, because it was kind of just like, okay, like big weight lifted off, and it was just like, it's going to be okay either way, whichever way it goes. And again, it went back to, that's where I got okay, I'm just going to control what I can control. I'm not going to look around to the sides anymore. I'm going to try and work as hard as I can, and all those things, and control what I can control, and let it all just kind of go off to the rest of it just be its own thing. And I ended up getting to 280 at the, and then had a little bit of a slump to end the year, and I think I ended at like 250. But that was a far cry from where I was, and that was a huge point in my career, in my life. I think big fork in the road there. Not to say that there weren't other trials along the way. There were other things I had to learn along the way. Even the next year in Savannah, there were struggles. In Binghamton, the year after that, there were struggles. There's been struggles every year. But that point in my life was one that I think was the biggest fork and crossroads.
Brandon, you've been so generous with your time, and we'll let you go in a second here. I know you've got some work to do, but just have a couple more. We want to get to a fan question. We want to talk to you about one other thing. But before we do, you've been so open about the journey and just how difficult it was for you.
Yeah.
So now that people have kind of a perspective on that, give us a little bit of a perspective as to what that moment was then on June 26, 2016, when you make your Major League debut.
Yeah.
Not just get that call, but step out onto that field, and your parents were in attendance. I remember speaking to them that day. What stands out to you about that moment, given all that you went through?
The first thing that comes to mind is I always thought of when I watched the movie The Rookie, when he calls his wife and he says, "Hey, I need you to bring a sports coat to Arlington." And she's like, "Why?" And then he goes, "Yeah, I guess there's a dress code in the big leagues." And, they all, start going crazy. And I always thought of that moment, I thought, man, I want to make that phone call so badly to my parents. And so on that night, I was in Reno, and when I found out, I was let known that I was going to the big leagues. I called them. I called my parents, and I said, "Hey, I need you guys to find a flight to Atlanta tonight for the morning." And they said, "Atlanta? What? Oh my gosh!" And I said, "Yeah." I said, I'm going to the big leagues. I need you guys to be there." And they were just so happy. My parents, they'd been there through it all. Biggest cheerleaders. I mean, they lived and died, with me. My mom especially, she feels every pain that I feel. And my dad was just so elated, so proud, so excited, and so to be able to make that phone call to them was, first of all, one dream come true, and then for them to come to Atlanta and for me to play in the big leagues, obviously another huge childhood dream come true. But I just remember coming out for the day game, because the night game was great. I got there, and the
night before.
I got to see the family and everything. But they told me, "Hey, you're just gonna rest today, and then you'll play tomorrow." And so I came out for the Sunday day game, and I didn't sleep hardly at all that night. And I just came out, and I saw my parents. I saw my dad in the stands, and I was on the field, and he came running down, and I just grabbed him and I hugged him, and I just said, "We made it, we finally made it, through those times." And that's when those times like Brooklyn, when you were struggling, when you didn't think that you were gonna make it, and your parents, encouraged you through it. Times in Las Vegas, when I had a heart-to-heart with my now wife about, I don't know if this is going to work out, even being that close, even AAA, and I said, I don't know if this is going to work out. And for her to be able to, to be there and support me and see that through, give me the encouraging words. That's what you go back to is, again, it goes back to that journey of enjoying like all the little things along the way. That getting to the end of where, when I made it to the major leagues was great, but it wouldn't have meant nearly as much if all these struggles and all these little things and all these grinds throughout the minor leagues hadn't have happened and we hadn't have persevered through it. It wouldn't have meant nearly as much. And so that's what my mind was going back to, was man, remember this day when, when things were terrible and we thought it wasn't going to work out. Remember this day when, when you had to encourage me because, I was down. And remember this day when I was, missing family and I wasn't sure that I was doing the right thing and all, and just remember all these times, and we persevered through it, and it was we, because I wouldn't have made it without the supporting cast around me, without family and friends, and even without my brother, who had to be the guinea pig for a Wyoming kid, playing baseball. He was first guy D1, and then had to tell us, this is how other guys do pro ball, and this is what you need to be good at, and all those things that had to come into play. And then they all come to this one moment where you accomplish a childhood dream, where you get to enjoy it with family and friends. It was incredible. And that, just embracing my dad and saying, we made it. Not I made it, we made it. That was just that culmination of a dream that had been going on for 18, 19 years, ever since I was probably 3-4 years old. And I'll never forget that day. And then they got to come to New York and watch first home run, first walk, first RBI, first hit by pitch, which I seem to do a lot now. It's one of those things.
That's the big one. First hit by pitch.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep the ball.
Yeah, exactly. It's been incredible that they've been able to be a part of that, but it's the journey along the way that makes those moments special. It's the grind. It's getting through those moments when you didn't, you weren't sure that it was going to work out. That's what makes that day, those moments special, and it'll always be so special to me. It'll always bring back such a flutter of emotions and memories, and I look back on it and smile, because it's still surreal.
Well, we've covered a lot of heavy stuff, so we'll end with a couple of lighthearted notes.
All right.
And you mentioned the smile, so maybe we'll lead off the
our
question.
Fan question. Allie D on Twitter. She says you've got the best smile in baseball. Hard to argue.
Thanks, Allie.
What's your oral health regimen?
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. Well, he'll love this. Like Dr. Jacobus, he's the orthodontist in Port St. Lucie. Believe it or not, man, I could bring up some pictures. I had some crooked teeth and whatnot.
I don't buy it.
Yeah, and I still don't have the prettiest smile, but it's way better than it was back in 2014. I think is when I started them, and I did those Invisalign, whatever. So thanks to Dr. J for straightening my teeth out, and. That it was so funny, because when he started it too, he knew that I played for the Mets, but I was in high A at that time, and he's like, "All right, these will be done just in time for you to have your New York media smile." And it's funny now that it is like it ended up being the way that it was, because who would have known at that time that you could have it actually would have ended up being like a calling card of mine, but. No, just brush your teeth twice a day and floss.
I was going to say floss is the big one, right?
Yeah, and Listerine mouthwash at night. That's my
You're getting
oral
a lot of
regimen.
Plugs into this answer right here. Listerine.
There you go.
Dr. Jacoby,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. What I got?
Some of those
Crest 3D White. There you go. Throw another sponsor in there, right? So, it's it's one of those things where I was not good at taking care of my teeth when I was younger. I was one of those kids that was, brushing your teeth, and mom had to force me and all that stuff. And now, thank goodness, mom forced me to do as much as I did then, because it still wasn't enough. But now it's become much more of a priority, because you start to realize as you get older that these decisions have an impact for the rest of your life. And you're like, I only get this set of teeth for my life. So these got to last me a long time.
Yeah, and your job, you're showing them off.
Yeah, exactly.
You got a lot of camera. You can't really hide that.
That run around the bases after a home run wouldn't look the same.
With just no teeth, just gumming it. Yeah.
All right, the last thing here. And we are going to do this with everybody.
Okay.
And you're such a nice guy, you might not have one, but
we're talking with a lot of ex-Mets.
A lot of ex-Mets who have good Jay Horwitz stories.
Oh, okay.
Any good Jay Horwitz story that you have?
Jay, man.
Uniquely Jay.
I love Jay. I love him. But the best Jay Horwitz stories that I can get is I always die laughing when I walk by there when I first get to the field, and he is reading the newspaper, and it is right here. I mean, I am serious that it is 2 inches, maybe an inch from his face, where he is just like going across the newspaper.
For those listening and not watching this, you can see Brandon. So you can actually see him moving his face.
He will move his face across that newspaper, and it is literally his nose is touching the paper, and I just die laughing every time because it's not. I mean, I feel bad, but it's like if you knew Jay, he'd laugh at it too. When he's looking at it. But he's such a great guy. That's something I'll always remember Jay for, is that if he's reading something, his nose is literally on it. And
trust us, given some of the people that we've talked to about doing these interviews, that's a very tame Jay Horwitz.
I've heard of some bad stuff that they did to him, but
you'll have to subscribe to the podcast and listen to some of those.
Exactly. No, for us it's been very a lot more tame, I think. So, but it's that's something I'll always remember with Jay.
Brandon, we could talk to you for hours. This has been so great. We really appreciate you doing this.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Wayne. Yep. Thanks,
good debut episode. All right, that is
great.
Brandon Nimmo.
Thanks for having me on.